Welcome to Porch Play Chat, sponsored by the American Association for the Child's Right to Play, or more affectionately titled IPA USA. IPA USA is the USA affiliate of the International Play Association, and as part of our efforts to promote play, we've introduced Porch Play Chats. And these are conversations with people who are just as passionate about play as we are. You can go to our website at IPAUSA.org, and up in that top right-hand corner, you can click on our Facebook page and be a friend on our Facebook page. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then magically, every Monday, a new Porch Play Chat will appear in your feed. I'm Deb Lawrence, and I'm president of IPA USA. With me on the porch today is Vivien Geneser. I hope I got that similar correct. Yes. You can always correct me. And Josh Thompson, both PhDs who are working on a really important topic. So Vivien has served as co-editor of the Journal of Early Years, which is published by the Texas Association for the Education of Young Children since 2012. She was the co-editor of the IPA USA eJournal from 2015 to 2021, and she's published numerous articles and book chapters about play and education. She's the editor of the book Scholarly Snapshots, The Importance of the Child's Right to Play, which was published in 2022, and she's the author of the textbook Promoting Teaching and Learning Through Play. You have been busy. Dr. Thompson has a passion to promote and protect childlike wonder. Oh, me too. And a love of learning. Josh had the fortune to have an adventurous dad and a creative mom. And so playful learning was built into his childhood. And so today's topic is play as equity. How do teachers transfer knowledge about play into a lifetime of playful learning in their future classrooms? It's such a fabulous topic. How does that happen?
You want to go first?
You go.
Am I going first? So I am a lecturer at the Texas State University. I teach an undergraduate course, and the title of the course is Play in Educational Settings for Diverse Learners. And when we get to the topic of equity, well, we do 3 weeks of equity. We do a week on systemic racism, and then we do, and that's focusing mostly on the African-American population. And then we do a week on language in play, focusing more on second language learners of all different cultures, not just Hispanic, but since we're in South Texas, a lot of it is Hispanic. And then the third week we do gender equity, talking about how girls and boys are treated differently and how that affects their play behaviors. And I think the number one message I have for everybody is that teachers serve on the front lines of social justice. And my students, who are predominantly white, are wonderful, idealistic, completely embrace equity, and yet they don't grasp the complexity of some systemic racism. I'm saying that the feedback that they give me. And then they also don't necessarily recognize their own unconscious bias, which is, they say if you want to solve problems of racism and equity, look in the mirror. I mean, I got that from one of the readings I did. And so they don't understand the enormity and complexity of systemic racism. And I've been studying this for decades. And so I'm not sure that I even understand it, because I have quite a few friends who are African-American who will tell me things that shock me, even though I've been studying it and living it and trying to promote equity for years. And so let me define equity. Equity involves acknowledging that students are different and giving all children what they need to be successful is equity. Diversity is reality, but inclusion is a choice. So we all agree that play enhances learning. So when students are denied time for play, it diminishes their potential. And as I said, teachers serve on the front lines of social justice, yet most are white and may not grasp the enormity and complexity of systemic racism. And I absolutely, this is the absolute truth that I once upon a time, now it's been a long time ago, but I had a student who said, well, I'm only going to teach in private schools because I don't want to deal with diversity. And I'm thinking,
Oh,
do you live a sheltered life?
Yeah.
I mean, I can't
Mhm.
imagine wanting that for starters, but also that she could even grasp that that's a possibility. So the concerns about children in play in terms of lower socioeconomic groups having less access to play, or underserved communities, is recess. Okay, I'm talking right now about the state of Texas. Recess is not mandated. There's no, I've tried to look, I went to a presentation once where they're saying in Texas, certain parts of Texas children had more time for recess, which I totally believe. But there's insufficient data for me to quote that because a lot of the studies that I have found are several years old. So I won't quote those studies, but I will say the concerns are children who have less opportunities tend to have lower quality playgrounds, less time for recess,
Mhm.
and then less playful learning in the
Mhm.
classroom. And a lot of that is from an article that was published in 2015 by Olga Jarrett, John Sutterby, Darlene DeMarie, and Vera Stenhouse. I know you're probably familiar with that article, Deb.
And so Vivien, I'm gonna add to something that's just gonna
Please do.
emphasize what you just said.
Mhm.
2 days ago, and I've been so disturbed by it, we got the test scores, our
Right.
favorite test scores for 13-year-olds that showed that their reading and their math skills had dropped, right?
Mhm.
And the solution in one state is to bring them back to school 20 days early
Wow.
and to do direct instruction to get them caught up. And I was just like, oh my God, you are just, you're on this gerbil
Yeah.
wheel in the gerbil cage, and you are absolutely not realizing that everything that you've tried that has been more and more instruction and more time in the classroom and more academics hasn't worked for 22 years.
Exactly.
And children are suffering. And so I just had to add that in because it is driving me absolutely crazy. And I think we need to do some letter to the editor, to the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal,
That's
or
cool.
someone that says we have got to stop what's not working.
Well, remember
And-
Dorothy Sluss was telling us she had it broken down in the number of minutes of fewer minutes per since the 70s. She had it broken down in one of her articles about since the early 70s, the time for play and the acknowledgement of the value of play. That's the thing we want to really work on.
Mhm.
But the last point that I wanted to make before I hand it over to Josh, because I think I'm talking too much, is the whole studies about the school to prison pipeline is directly aligned with our play studies, because it's all reinforced by systemic racism. And the school to prison pipeline is such a hot topic anyway, because the prisons are billion-dollar businesses.
Our
So
industry.
there's a lot of people profiting off these kids being sent to prison.
For-profit prisons, they look at those third grade test reading
Yeah,
scores and
yeah.
decide how many beds they're going to need in a certain number of years.
Yeah, and how
It's
much of that No
awful.
Child Left Behind was tied to the initiative to get money for prisons.
Yes.
And Nathaniel Bryan wrote an article in which he was describing the systemic racism in play, how it affects play. And he says we need to expand these studies to school playground to prison pipeline because of the behaviors of children on the playground where they are replicating what the adults are doing, which, they are doing things like accusing each other of behaviors that were maybe just kind of rough and tumble play and they're misinterpreted,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
that's another part of the big picture of systemic racism. So I'm done.
Yeah, and yeah, I want to go back to that implicit bias that you were
Mhm.
talking about, because one of the benefits that I find in being a community college professor is the diversity of students in the classroom. So we have diverse cultures,
Mhm.
we have diverse ethnicity, we have diverse age. We don't have as much diverse gender as I would like, but
Right.
we have a great like mix
Mhm.
of these wonderful contributors to a classroom community. And when we start talking about social justice and equity, it it becomes apparent the diverse experiences of the people in the classroom. And we don't do that in their first course or their second course, but by the third time they've had me, they feel pretty safe in the classroom and they can really articulate that was not my experience, or your childhood was much different than mine. And it is incredible to see how, when we begin to talk about social justice at that point in time and equity, that the students who may have had a, a lack of awareness of the differences of other people's experiences, how their eyes begin to open
Mhm.
and they begin to go, I can't believe that happened to you. Or, and then fortunately, the people who may have had those experiences speak up and said, it doesn't just happen to me. So that we can really dig deep into not only implicit bias that they might have, that they haven't recognized yet, but also that it's not just one case that they're hearing. It is across the population. And so
Mhm.
that, I think, is an important piece for what we do in early care and education programs if we're directors, in college classrooms, in professional development sessions, because we are able then to hear those different perspectives and different experiences from a broader population than might be just in one center or one area. So after all that, Josh.
Yeah, the ripple
I am
effect.
here to say yay and amen. The people here are talking and they know that we are talking about things that can be so different. And we have all the research, we have all the perspectives. Dr. Geneser and I come into this from a very humanistic, very child-centered view from Camp Geneser, from my own life in my Montessori classroom with 3 to 6-year-olds. But now, this season of college professors, we're teaching to the public school, to the
Mhm.
system, and it's quite unnerving to really look at it and say, what are we doing? We're like leading lambs to the slaughter. We're preparing these great-minded, good-hearted students who want to be teachers for different reasons.
Mhm.
They want to integrate play and integrate project-based learning and integrate inquiry, but then they show up at their first day and they want to keep their job. They want to perform according to the work. So in our conversations about this time with you, Deb, we've really come to center on the child's right to play. That's very much a part of the Scholarly Snapshots book that Vivien edited. It's very much the work that Vivien and I partnered with in early years, the Journal of Texas AUIC, and the variety of people that are involved in the lives of children, are involved in playful learning. And yet here we see that the truth is the system, the schooling, from childcare centers to even to the trickle down to the way families are looking at the productivity of their child. They're investing in their child's education, so they want to get something back in return instead of just valuing childhood. So really elevating that sense that children have the right to play, and honoring that as a disruptive force, because it's everything about teaching, everything about the want to do the right thing with children is really countered by the system, all of the different parts of it that are embedded in this hierarchical view of, I know something and I need you to sit down and shut up so I can tell you. All of those direct instruction models need to be just totally overcome. Now, we've tried it. We've been talking about this. We've been doing this work, but yet it's not moving the needle. We're seeing more and more of a view of education as punitive, taking away recess. You owe me 10 minutes.
Right.
You didn't finish your work. You owe me 10 minutes.
So,
And taking that didactic approach and then not understanding why they didn't grasp the concept.
yeah, hello. Lots of reasons why you didn't ask the child. So the wisdom that we need to consider is, how is it that the child, I mean, play is play. Play is not inequitable. Play is, and it is universal, and it is not just human, but it is definitely a driving force. So empowering play as the tool for this takeover of the system, this takedown of the system, is very much a part of this next version. So we have to have play in teacher ed. We have to play with our adults, help adults identify what Stuart Brown taught us was play personalities of adult learners, and different ways that play is a powerful force, and we now need to leverage playful learning in the takeover of the system. The child will lead us. They'll show us.
Yeah,
They will.
They will.
Well, and I think the issue that has started this whole mess is when people who have no understanding of development and no understanding of the importance of those dispositions or approaches to learning that Lillian Katz and Mary Lou Hyson have drilled into our heads forever, that if we don't allow children to play and to master those dispositions or approaches to learning, then we might have good intentions if I have to catch you up. But what you have to catch them up on are exposure and opportunities to develop those dispositions of learning, and to be able to be curious, to feel safe enough, to have enough food, to have all of Maslow's hierarchy at the bottom 2 or 3 levels, so that they can be curious and they can explore and they can discover and they can get pleasure from what they've discovered. And then they want to repeat it. All of that learning cycle that is embedded in that birth to 5 years of when those dispositions are mastered is being taken away because we're trying to catch kids up. And so it is just, it's crazy that play has become, oh, that's just recreation, instead of that's the foundation of all future learning. And so I struggle all the time, since, we're the only country that has failed to ratify
Article
the UN
31
Convention on the Rights of the Child. I struggle with how to flip this paradigm that we seem to be in, where we're on that gerbil wheel, spinning and spinning and spinning with no results that we can point to that says this approach of didactic, academic, lack of recess works. It doesn't. And
Right.
we have plenty of research that tells us that, especially, Chris's kids, my husband's kids, went to a upper middle class school district. They lived in an area that was upper middle class. The test results in that, and so they had all the resources possible, everything, because they were funded because they met those test scores. But their standardized test results haven't gone up because they were already high.
Already, yeah.
Yet, they punish the schools that have low test scores because they take away more resources. So I don't know. I just want to, can we just be kings and queens for the day and fire all those people who are doing the wrong things and bring in people? But I really think that the passion that we have for this topic needs to be in letters to the editor, needs to be in pushing back against what hasn't worked through journal articles, because we know this stuff, we have the evidence, but I don't think we're advocating enough for it. And so that's where I want us to go. How do we advocate for teachers to play in the classroom in teacher education programs? My students play in every course.
Right.
We play outside, we play in the classroom, we play with each other, we play cooperatively, we play by ourselves, we play all the time, because we're losing the generation that you and I had, where we played outside for hours without any adult interfering with it or directing our learning, because our students, the young students in the classroom, haven't had that experience.
They've been overly supervised.
They have been. And so that whole risk, that whole ability to understand where your body is in space and to have that internal warning system if you've climbed too high or that's too high to jump off of, we're losing it because we're too afraid of lawsuits, or we're too afraid of principals, or we're too afraid of losing our jobs instead of doing what's right for kids. And that's where I'm losing my mind.
Well, the things that have to change do include some of what Deb referred to as getting rid of some people. And there are malevolence out there. But I mean, as soon as you said, and bring new people in, it's like, wait a minute, we haven't fixed nothing. Because the very nature of the system is to eat us and spit us out, grind us down. So there needs to be letters to editors, there needs to be advocacy, there needs to be family buy-in that really recognizes and acknowledges, oh, this is my child's true self in play. My child is really rising, not in competition, not in spelling bees, whatever other skill development. No, my child.
Whatever other competitive category you're looking at. Whereas play is more cooperative. But anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's it. That's the conversion that we're looking for. That we've got the research, we understand, and we're able to teach it, and we get buy-in. But then what? They die. They become a part of this enormous cog. And I'm not advocating for, just destruction. I'm advocating for, a true revolution of the system that looks at equity, looks at inclusion, looks at diversity, looks for social justice, and says the key is the child. The key is the child's ability to play in a sandbox, to play with objects, to play with language, and to create something new. And if we can help that child connect those successes at inquiry, the successes at problem solving with, oh, that's what school is about. Oh, that's what that's what is expected here. Let me show you. I got that. I can demonstrate it. But as long as
That's it. It's that love of learning that is absent. Learning is drudgery. Learning is boring. It's all those negative dispositions that in that birth to 5-year time frame, they're developing positive or negative dispositions that will carry them forward. That they'll see if it's negative dispositions, I was bored, I was frustrated, I was overwhelmed, I was I felt like a failure, then their motivation to try something new is going to be inhibited,
Right.
because of those negative dispositions. And so, it's I always tell my college students when I was a kindergarten teacher, and my first year, and the principal walked in the door and handed me the shrink wrap curriculum, right? And said, here's your curriculum. I'm so welcome to the school. I'll be stopping by to observe. And I said, thank you so very much. He walked out the door, and I went over to my teacher's closet and I threw it in the very back and never opened it. And 2 years later, after he come in, every time he came in, he said, oh, your kids are so engaged. Oh, your kids are, just look how engaged they are. They're you can just see the enthusiasm. 2 years later, he comes in and sits down at the end of the school year and says, why do all the first grade teachers want your children? And I said, well, you have to promise not to be mad. And he said, why would I be mad? I'm just asking a question. You have to promise not to be mad. And we went through this scenario where he says, okay, I promise not to be mad. And I go over to the teacher's closet and I pull out all the stuff that's in the teacher's closet. And in the very back is the shrink wrap curriculum he gave me 2 years ago, and I set it on the table. And he says, you never opened the box? And I said, no. Those people don't know my children. My children are different every year. I have to observe them. I have to figure out where they are developmentally, and then I have to scaffold their development.
And so that brings us to the subject of assessment. We need to prepare our teachers for play-based assessment, because if you prepare the environment for children, so they are self-selecting activities, but you have prepared the environment in such a way that they are achieving, and Josh knows better than anyone about this because of his Montessori background, so that they are achieving particular goals, and then you can document it with assessment, or give them a period of, like, if you absolutely have to have worksheets, give them most of the time to play, and then a worksheet the last few minutes, just so that you can have something to show the administrators or the parents, but not, or, take photographs of what they're doing and showing, describing the skills that they're developing through these images. But that is one of the key points is everyone wants to
documenting their learning, right? It's documenting their learning and the learning that is happening. And I always tell my students, worksheets don't work, and I never want you to use them. I don't care if you're in 5th grade. You don't use worksheets. That's not how kids learn. And so when we think about this, as we're beginning to wrap up, because our time is almost up, but as we think about what are 2 or 3 action steps that you think are critical to moving us forward in helping future teachers or current teachers, and then maybe a couple of things that we could do to change the system. So what are some closing thoughts from both of you about that?
National Writing Project has a very good principle that says teachers learn about writing by writing. So this is our fundamental principle, is that teachers, educators, administrators learn about play by playing. So it's an opportunity to invite administrators to come and to play with teachers. I don't know where. We have on our campus a children's museum, and we have set up days for free days for teachers and administrators to play together. And it's just promoting that sense that, oh, play is my native state. Play is my best well-being. And we're not going to change the system that way, except one by one, two by two, an administrator and a teacher together. That's one action. Go
That's a
ahead.
great action. And parents too. If you're
Yes.
a child development program director, invite parents to come in and talk about their play memories, and then give them opportunities to play in an environment where they freely choose what they want to do. And maybe even play with their children instead of handing them an iPad or an iPhone. And so, yeah, so, Walter Drake and Marcia Nell all wrote that wonderful book on how helping people value play even as adults.
Right.
And so, Vivien, what ideas do you have? What can we do?
Just move play to the center of all educational experiences, which again, it needs a groundswell of efforts and advocacy, but for people to become aware of the value of play and to see, like, for example, Tim Keinert is leading this project at Bottom Elementary in San Marcos, where it's a summer school session. If you're an education major and you sign up for that session, you get 3 hours of college credit, and basically they are guide on the side instead of sage on the stage, facilitators of these kids playing. They build all kinds of things. They have all kinds of measuring tapes and cardboard boxes. They have the freedom to go from one room to another and use different materials, engage in different activities throughout the day. And so it's a model. And so they wrote an article that it'll be in the next issue of Early Years, and to, distribute information like that, models, so we can see how it works. And there have been models for years, but just to expand those models.
As the
I
equity,
absolutely
we
agree.
really need to remember how play's different. Play looks different, and we need to really concentrate all of our cultural awareness around a sense of awe and respect for other playful learnings. And we need to enter into play in ways that may not be comfortable to us, but yet can invite us to see, oh, I see how that turn of a phrase. Oh, I see how that construction with the blocks. I can see that there's a different way than what I would have done.
Well, and I think the other research that I'm really fascinated about, even though, my God, I've been doing this for 45 years, the other research I'm really, really focused on is work that Heather Burke-Santee is working on the Piaget schemas. And if teachers understand those schemas, then they have something to observe, right? Oh, they're in the transportation schema. Oh yeah, look what they're doing, transporting things from one area to another. Oh, they're in this schema. And again, that gives them, it gives them evidence of development that they can document and assess, and then put up in documentation panels for families that this is development. And this is why it's important. So anyway, this has been incredible. We could do this for, one more.
Mind-blowing about development is just to really take Ages and Stages, which has its viability, and really transform. There's this one line in the new developmentally appropriate practice position statement that says, maybe we ought to think about it as waves and cycles. And there are developmental psychologists, Tamis Lamonda from NYU has just published.
Howard Gardner said that too.
She's just published Developmental Cascades. Really think about development differently. So let's take our children and follow them, and we'll go some new places to play.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. This has been absolutely incredible, and you have to come back for another one so we can continue this conversation around equity and social justice and how play contributes. To learn more about IPA USA, please visit our website at ipausa.org. And until next time, thanks for playing.